She's now re-engaged a little bit more, and I think honestly because of 1905 and some of the issues that we've brought forward, you're hearing her speak to some more of these issues again a little bit more frequently, because we are challenging her and pushing back. Public pressure is how you make change happen, and that is the only thing, in my opinion, that politicians actually respond to is public pressure. They need to feel uncomfortable in their position, because when they feel comfortable, they're just going to go along. And leadership is not about following. It's not about getting in front of the parade. How many times have you heard Danielle Smith and other politicians find a good parade and get in front of it? Well, that's not really leadership. The leadership happened with the person or the individuals or the groups that actually created the parade. That is leadership. Getting in front of it and hijacking a parade, that's not leadership. And we're seeing that so much in politics today. People are only jumping on board when things become popular, not necessarily when they are the right time to do it. Why? Because it was the right thing to do. So the Alberta Pension Plan, we're starting to see that again resurface, and she says, well, we need to wait for a number in the fall. Well, yes and no. It'd be really nice to have a number, obviously, and it's certainly something that could be easily more identifiable to work with, as far as telling people what exactly the benefits that we can offer, whether it's reducing the rates or increasing the benefits or a bit of both. But the reality is we actually don't need anything from the federal government to do this. And the part that really upsetted me the most was Danielle Smith actually put Bill 2 into place and said we have to have a referendum, and she legislated it. So if you want to have a referendum on anything here in the province, it's just really a matter of pick a date and have a referendum. You didn't have to put it into legislature. So now, regardless of who is in government, and the thing you have to remember with government, it's a UCP government today. It could be a different government next election. We don't know, right? So if you are going to have to legislate that there's a referendum, well, will it happen? Won't it happen? I don't know. She should have just picked a date, made it happen, or in my opinion, she should have just went ahead and did it, and that's called leadership. Okay, so now we've got the Alberta Pension Plan. Constitutional Convention, I think everybody will agree that Alberta gets the short end of the stick from Canada over and over again. It's been that way for our entire history. And equalization payments, Danielle Smith came out with the Alberta Sovereignty Act, which is, the Alberta Sovereignty Within Canada Act. But really, a lot of letter writing has been going on. So the carbon tax, we're still having to deal with that. Equalization, we're still having to deal with that. I think it's just we have to have a better system and a better means of working with the federal government. But Alberta can't be doing it on its own. So, let's get some constitutional conventions on the go here. Let's start talking with some of the other provinces. You're starting to see that happen more and more now. Even Newfoundland and Labrador, BC has come on board on particular issues. And let's, as provinces, reattain the autonomy that realistically, jurisdictionally belongs to us, and push back on the federal government together. So that's constitutional convention. And then, of course, there's leadership accountability. This one is my favorite because pretty promises and smiling and saying, oh, pretty please, would you do this, does not work. And the government, and it doesn't matter which government it is, pick one anywhere around the world, politicians are really good at making promises, really crappy at following through on them. And so this leadership accountability petition is about, you have 24 months from the time that you actually have made your campaign promise and gotten elected to when you actually so 24, sorry, I just had an interruption there, forgive me. 24 months, and if you have not followed through on the promises that you have made when you were campaigning, whether it be as a written promise or a verbal commitment that you've made to a group or to media, 24 months. And if you have not followed through, then you have to have a leadership review. It's not optional. So you have to have a leadership review. And people have the right to know why you haven't been able to fulfill that promise. So here again, we have Danielle Smith who talked about flat tax and reducing taxes. And now it's like, well, sorry, we didn't really have the revenues to do that. But here's the reality. It's not a priority. That's the reality. It's not that they didn't have the revenues. We have the biggest government we've ever had and the biggest budget we've ever had. She's talking about putting a high speed train from Calgary to Edmonton. That's a bigger priority than making life more affordable for you. How about we reduce the fuel taxes? She put that back on, and yet you've got Manitoba who actually took it off to make life more affordable for people. So it's not that they can't do it. It's not that she can't do it. It is really about she hasn't prioritized it. She hasn't made that her one of her major priorities. And so to me, I looked at the affordability issue in this province, and I went, that's one area where, in my opinion, that should have been honored and it should have been done quickly. Here is a little history lesson for those of us who have just recently gotten involved in politics and are new to politics. If government is going to make bold or controversial moves, they typically do it within the first 12 months. Let's even be generous, first 18. We are well past that time with Danielle Smith. And so she has made promises on parental rights. She has made promises on the human rights issues around COVID and medical choice. She has made promises to the Coots boys, which I don't know if you were following today, 6 years and 6.5 year sentences for mischief. This is just criminal, what's going on with the judicial system in our society. And then she's also made promises with respect to the taxes, which she didn't follow through on. Climate change has been a big issue for me, although we don't even really talk about it much here. And of course, AHS was a big one, and she hasn't really followed through with much on that. And I can go on and on and on. I think the point is that a promise made must be a promise kept. And if you're going to do these big promises, they needed to be done and implemented sooner rather than later, because otherwise it just gets too far into the years closer and closing the gap on the election, the next election, and that's where their focus is. Well, I need to get reelected, because that's all politicians think about, is I just need to get reelected, right? And that's the sad reality. So that is our policies.